The text came in at 11 minutes past midnight, the night before Thanksgiving. My phone lit up the dark bedroom and buzzed once against the wood of the nightstand. I almost let it sleep until morning. Then I saw it was from my daughter, Carrie. "Mom, I know you put up the money for the restaurant, but Diane doesn't want you at the family dinner this year. Please don't make this harder than it has to be. I hope you can understand." I read it once. Then I read it again, slower, the way you reread a number on a lab result. Each time the words sat there exactly the same, and each time they cost me a little more. I did not turn on the lamp. I lay in the gray light from the screen and felt something old give way inside my chest, something I had been propping up with both hands for almost 4 years. At that hour, the truth weighs more than it does in daylight. The house was quiet. The furnace ticked. Somewhere down the street a dog gave up barking. I had paid $310,000 so my daughter and her husband could build a life they were proud of, a restaurant with their names on the lease and their dreams on the menu, and now I was being told there was no chair for me at a table I had bought twice over. I did not write back right away. I set the phone face down and listened to my own breathing. If you have ever loved someone all the way to the bottom of your savings and still been treated like a guest who stayed too long, I want you to do something for me. Leave one sentence in the comments tonight. Tell me what they said to you, or what you wish you had said back. I read every one of them, and I read them for a reason you will understand by the end of this. My name is Eleanor Brandt. Most people call me Nell. I am 66 years old. I worked 31 years as a loan officer at a small credit union on Sherman Avenue, the kind of place where people came in scared about a transmission they could not pay for, and I learned to read a person's whole life off the way their hands moved on the counter. I have been a widow for 8 years. I have one daughter and one grandson, a 5-year-old named Owen who calls me Gigi and tells me everything twice. And that night, the night before the holiday I had loved most of my life, I picked up the phone again and answered with one word. Understood. What none of them knew, not my daughter, not her husband Travis, and certainly not Diane, the woman who had crossed my name off the Thanksgiving list, was that the controlling share of that restaurant still belonged to me. 60%. My name on the operating agreement, my signature on the bank papers, my money in every wall and walk-in cooler and copper light fixture. I had spent 4 years making myself smaller so I would fit into the corners of their lives. And lying there in the dark, I finally understood that no corner would ever be small enough. So I made a decision. Not a loud one. The quiet kind, the kind that does not announce itself until it is already done. I was not going to that dinner. That much was certain. But the dinner everyone was so carefully planning around my absence was not going to go the way they thought, either. Sometimes a woman who has been overlooked for years does not raise her voice. She simply moves the ground out from under the people standing on her. Let me tell you how I got here, because the ending only makes sense if you walk the whole road with me. 4 years ago, when Carrie brought Travis home for the first time, I was glad for her. He was tall and a little shy, a cook with burned scars on his forearms and a way of talking about food like it was a language he had been waiting his whole life to speak. He looked at my daughter the way Raymond used to look at me. That counted for everything. Raymond was my husband. We were married 34 years. He ran a hardware store on the east side of town, Brandt and Son, though the son had been his own father and there were no sons after, only Carrie, who grew up on the lumber smell and the little brass bells over the door. Raymond died 8 years ago, in the spring, of a heart that had been quietly failing him for longer than either of us admitted. After the funeral I sold the store. I put the money in a savings account and I did not touch it. It was supposed to be the thing that let me grow old without asking anyone for anything. The first Sunday Travis came to dinner, I made my mother's pot roast and the buttermilk pie she taught me to make standing on a kitchen chair when I was 7. I set the table with the good cloth, the one with the cross-stitched edge that took my grandmother a winter to finish. Carrie wore a yellow dress. She had a glow about her I had not seen since she was a girl waiting for the school bus on the first morning of the year. 2 weeks later, she asked if she could bring Travis's parents to meet me. They arrived 10 minutes early, which I would learn was a tactic. Travis, his father Gerald, and his mother Diane. Diane came through my door the way a building inspector comes through a door, already counting. She had silver hair set in a way that did not move and a thin gold watch she checked twice before we sat down. She took my hand for half a second. "What a quaint little house," she said. "So much character." Quaint. I had heard that word used about 1,000 homes over 31 years, always by people who meant something they were too polite to say out loud. It means small. It means I would not live here. I smiled and offered her pie. She put one fork's worth on her plate and moved it around without eating it. "I have to be so careful," she said, touching the base of her throat. "Rich things don't agree with me anymore." Gerald ate 2 slices and told me it was the best he'd had since his own mother passed. Travis ate like a man who appreciated a free meal. And Diane sat with her back very straight and looked at my walls, my curtains, the framed photo of Raymond by the bookshelf, taking inventory of a life she had already priced and found wanting. When they left, Carrie hugged me at the door with her whole body, the way she did as a child. "Aren't they wonderful?" she said. I told her they seemed lovely. The word stuck in my throat on the way out, but I let it go, because a mother learns early that some warnings are better swallowed than spoken. I was wrong about that. I have had years to think about how wrong. The wedding was small and good. I paid for the dress, for $1,000 from the store money, and I did not blink because Carrie cried when she saw herself in the mirror, and that was worth more than any number. Diane handled the reception, which she ran like a campaign. White roses, a string trio, place cards in gold ink. When Travis gave his toast, he thanked his mother and father for raising him to chase what he loved. He thanked Gerald for teaching him that a man finishes what he starts. He did not mention me, and he did not mention that the dress his bride was wearing had come out of an old hardware man's savings. Carrie found my eyes across the room and I raised my glass and mouthed that it was fine. It was not fine. But I had a lifetime of practice at the difference between fine and quiet. A year into the marriage, the two of them came to my house on a Tuesday night with a folder and a nervousness I recognized from my years behind the counter. People look that way right before they ask for money. "Mom," Carrie said, "Travis has a chance to do something real." He laid it out for me at my own kitchen table. A storefront had opened up on Lyle Street, a corner spot with big windows and a kitchen already roughed in from the bakery that had failed there. He had a concept, a farm-table place built around the food his grandmother used to make, the food my Raymond would have driven across the county for. He had a business plan with real numbers in it, which surprised me, because I have read a lot of business plans written on hope and very few written on arithmetic. This one had arithmetic. "We can cover the lease and the first few months," Carrie said. "But the build-out, the equipment, the licenses. We're short. A lot short." She looked at me with the eyes she has had since she was 4 years old, the eyes that have never once failed to find the soft place in me. "How much?" I asked. It was the only thing I said. $310,000. That was the gap. It was most of what I had, the hardware store and Raymond's modest life insurance and 3 decades of bringing my lunch from home. It was the money that was supposed to mean I would never have to knock on anyone's door. But Carrie's face when I said yes was the face from the morning of her wedding, and Raymond's voice was somewhere in the back of my head saying that money you cannot help your child with is just paper you guarded for nothing. So I said yes. Wherever you are listening from tonight, in whatever town, I would love to know the name of it. Put it in the comments. I like to picture the porches and the kitchens this story is reaching, because for a long time I thought I was the only woman it had happened to, and I was wrong about that too. Here is the part that matters, the part one almost did not do. I am a loan officer. I have watched more good families come apart over money than I could count, and almost never because anyone was wicked. It happens because nobody wrote anything down. So before I signed, I called Vivian Ashford, the attorney who had untangled Raymond's estate and who I trusted the way you trust a surgeon you have already survived once. If you are putting up that much, Vivian told me over the phone, you do not gift it. You hold it. We form the company, your money buys you the controlling interest, and Travis comes in as the managing member with a minority stake that vests over time. You keep the wheel, Nell, until you decide to hand it over. Maybe that's 2 years from now. Maybe it's never. But you keep it until then. I felt sick even hearing it. What kind of mother makes her daughter's husband sign a paper like that? But I had spent 31 years watching people who skipped that paper, and I had buried a husband who taught me that love and prudence are not enemies. So I did it. We formed the company. I held 60%. Travis was the managing member with 40, vesting over 5 years. The operating agreement said the controlling member kept final say over any sale, any rebrand, any change to the name or the concept, and held a permanent advisory seat at the table. Vivian read those clauses out loud and I half listened, because they felt like fire insurance, the kind of thing you pay for and pray you waste. When I told Carrie the structure, she did not flinch. That's smart, Mom, she said. It's your money. When we can buy you out, we will, and then it's all ours. Until then, you're our partner. She squeezed my hand across the table. I want you in this. Owen's going to grow up in that place. That night I drove home lighter than I had been in years. I thought I had bought my way into the center of my family. I thought the money was not really about the money at all, that it was a seat at the table I would sit in for the rest of my life. I named the restaurant on the drive home, before they had even thought to. Larkspur. Larkspur was in my wedding bouquet, tall blue spires of it, because Raymond grew them along the back fence and said they were the only flower stubborn enough to bloom in our bad clay. Carrie loved the name. Travis put it on the sign in brass letters. For about 6 months, it was the happiest I had been since the spring Raymond died. I should have read the shape of what was coming on the night we signed the bank papers. I was at the restaurant late, after the contractors had gone home, sweeping drywall dust off the new floor because I could not sit still while my own money turned into walls. Travis was out on the loading dock on the phone, and the back door was propped open for the air, and his voice carried the way a voice does in an empty building. He was talking to his mother. I did not mean to listen. Then I heard my own name and I could not help it. Yes, Mom, he was saying. Yes, Nell's putting up most of it. A pause. No, it's not that we don't trust her, it's her lawyer, she made us sign a thing where she keeps the majority share. A longer pause, and his voice dropped low. I know. I know how it looks. But we can't make a thing of it, Mom. Without her money there's no restaurant. We just let her feel like a partner for now, and a few years down the road we buy her out and then it's ours, all ours. I stood very still in the dark dining room with the broom in my hands. We let her feel like a partner. Not be one. Feel like one. I finished sweeping the floor I had paid for, and I drove home, and I said nothing about it, not that night and not for 4 years after. I told myself a young man says clumsy things to his mother, that everyone does, that it did not mean what it plainly meant. I am very good at telling myself things. It is the one talent that almost cost me my daughter. Then, slowly, the way water finds the low spot in a floor, Diane moved in. It started with the menu. Larkspur opened with 11 dishes, and one of them was Raymond's. A skillet cornbread with smoked honey and a crack of black pepper, the recipe he scribbled on the back of a paint mixing card that I still have in a kitchen drawer. Travis put it on the opening menu and called it Ray's cornbread, and the first night a man at table 6 told me it tasted like his grandfather's kitchen and I had to go stand in the alley for a minute. By the spring after opening, Ray's cornbread was gone. We're refining the concept, Diane explained, when I asked. She had taken to sitting at the corner two-top by the window during the dinner rush, the table the staff had started calling the owner's booth, though she owned nothing. Cornbread is a little homespun for where Travis is taking this, Eleanor. We're thinking about a tasting menu. James Beard people notice that kind of ambition. I looked at Travis. He looked at the floor. The cornbread came off the menu, and the little card that told the story of the recipe came down off the wall, and in its place went a framed review from a city magazine with Diane's favorite line about Travis circled in gold pen. Then the photograph went. When we opened, I had hung one picture by the host stand, a black and white of Raymond standing in the doorway of the hardware store in 1979, the brass bells just visible over his head, his sleeves rolled, grinning at whoever was behind the camera, which was me. Carrie had framed it herself. She said it belonged at the door because the whole place started with a man who believed in selling people the tools to fix their own lives. One evening it was simply not there. A watercolor of the Lyle Street Bridge hung in its place. It clashed with the new palette, Diane said, before I could even form the question. I had the framer hold on to it. You can take it home. I took it home. I hung it back in my own front hall, where Raymond grinned at me every morning, which was the only place he had ever been welcome anyway. I told myself I was being sensitive. A restaurant is a business, and businesses change. I told myself a lot of things that year. Carrie began calling less. We used to talk every day, a few minutes before bed, the way we had since she went off to college. Now 3 days would pass, then 5. When I called, it went to voicemail, and the callback came 2 days later, breathless, mid-errand. Mom, can't talk, I'm at the linen supplier with Diane. Mom, I'll call you tonight, we're at Diane's club for the chamber thing. Mom, later, we're tasting cake samples for the anniversary gala. Diane. Always there was a Diane on the other end of the sentence, pulling my daughter somewhere I was not invited. One Saturday I worked up the nerve to ask her. Do we not do our Sunday breakfasts anymore, honey? There was a pause on the line that told me more than her answer did. It's just that Sundays are kind of Travis's family day now, she said. Brunch at Diane's. It's a whole thing. You know how she gets if the routine changes. Could I come along sometime? Mom, it's complicated. Diane's funny about her brunches. Travis was no longer just my daughter's husband. He had become, somewhere along the way, Diane's son who happened to be married to my Carrie, and the family that Sunday breakfast belonged to was not the one I had raised. I decided the problem must be me. I decided I was not present enough, not generous enough, not easy enough to have around. So I tried harder, which is the oldest mistake in the book and the one I keep making. I started bringing food to the restaurant. On the slow afternoons between lunch and dinner, I would come in with a foil pan of the things Carrie loved as a girl, my chicken and dumplings, my brown sugar peach cobbler, food for the staff to eat on their break so they would not work a 14-hour shift on a granola bar. The cooks loved it. The first few times Carrie did too. Then one Tuesday I came in with a cobbler still warm from my oven and found the staff fridge already full. Glossy white deli containers with printed labels. Diane's lemon orzo. Diane's herb chicken. Diane's almond cake from the patisserie 2 blocks over, the one where a single slice cost more than I used to spend feeding Carrie for a day. Mom, you really don't have to keep doing this, Carrie said, not unkindly, taking the cobbler out of my hands. Diane's been having food sent. The fridge is kind of a battle for space right now. My cobbler in its dented pan looked like exactly what it was next to all that printing. I asked if she wanted me to take it home. No, leave it. We'll find room. I knew they would not eat it. I drove home with my hands tight on the wheel and a hot pressure behind my eyes that I did not let become anything. I had gotten very good, by then, at not letting it become anything. It was not only me being moved to the edge of the picture. It was the part of my life I loved most. Owen was 3 that year, all elbows and questions, and he had been mine in a particular way since the hour he was born, because Carrie went back to the restaurant fast after the baby and somebody had to be the soft place to land. I kept him 2 days a week while they got Larkspur off the ground. I taught him to crack an egg with one hand, more or less. He called me Gigi. He still does. Those 2 days were the brightest thing in every week I had. Then Diane gave up her board seats and announced that she intended to be present for her grandchild. The 2 days became one. The one became every other week, then a Saturday now and then, squeezed in around the schedule Diane kept at her own house, the one with the pool and the playroom a magazine had photographed. Owen started coming home talking about Grandmother Diane's koi pond and Grandmother Diane's movie room with the big reclining chairs. When his preschool sent home a drawing of his family, there was a tall woman with silver hair labeled Grandma in careful backward letters, and a smaller figure off to one side the teacher had to ask him about. He told her, "That's Gigi, she lives far away." "I do not live far away. I live 11 minutes from that school." But to a 3-year-old, far away is just the name for the place you stop getting taken to. I bought him a wooden train set, the good kind, the kind Raymond used to stock at the store. I kept it at my house so the boy would have a reason to ask to come over. A few months later Carrie mentioned, gently, that Owen had a whole train table at Diane's now, the deluxe one with the painted mountain, and maybe I could give mine away to a church sale. I said of course. I put it in the hall closet instead. It is still in there. Some things you cannot make yourself hand over, even when no one is coming to play with them anymore. In the early fall, Larkspur was coming up on its first anniversary, and I wanted to do something. The place had survived its first year, which most restaurants do not, and it had survived because a credit union loan officer had emptied her savings into it, and I thought that was worth a quiet dinner. I booked the back room at the steakhouse where Raymond used to take me on our anniversary. I invited Vivian, and Pat Halloran, my closest friend of 40 years, who had stood up at my own wedding and held Carrie an hour after she was born. I invited the original line cooks who had been there since opening night. I had a plan to give Travis and Carrie a gift, a brass plate I'd had engraved, the kind you screw into a wall by a front door. It read, Larkspur. Founded on the belief that good food brings people home. In memory of Raymond Brandt, who always left the porch light on. I sent the invitation 3 weeks out. Carrie called me that same night. "Mom, the invitation is so sweet, but there's a problem." That word, problem, hit the same nerve it always does. Diane's already planning the anniversary. She booked the whole front of the restaurant. There's a photographer coming, and someone from the magazine, and she invited the chamber people. It's the same night, Mom. She didn't know you'd planned anything. I sent it 3 weeks ago, Carrie. We talked about this dinner for a month. I know. But everything's already paid for on her end. She put down deposits. I can't tell her to move it. You could tell me to move it, though. The silence after that was the longest one yet. Mom, please don't make me choose. I told her she did not have to choose. I told her to go to the gala, that it would be beautiful, that I would cancel my little dinner. I hung up before my voice could do anything I would regret. I called the steakhouse and lost the $120 deposit. I called Pat and Vivian and the cooks and told them plans had changed. Then I sat at my own table and took the brass plate out of its tissue paper and read it 3 times, and I wrapped it back up and put it in the bottom drawer of my dresser, the drawer where I keep the things I am not sure mean anything anymore. Raymond's reading glasses are in that drawer. A lock of Carrie's baby hair. And now a plate that was supposed to hang by a door and never would. On the night of the gala, Carrie texted me a photo. The dining room glittering, Travis in a new jacket with his arm around her, Diane between them in emerald silk with a smile that had won. The caption said, "Wish you could have seen it, Mom. Magical night." I wrote back that I was proud of them and that Raymond would have loved it. I did not mention the dinner I had cancelled, or the deposit, or the plate in the drawer. That is the trade a mother makes without ever signing anything. We eat the cost, and we smile, and we say it is fine, even when something inside is going quietly out, like a pilot light in an old furnace, the kind you do not notice has failed until the whole house has gone cold. Then it was November, and Carrie called to talk about Thanksgiving. My heart actually lifted when I saw her name on the screen, which tells you how starved I had let myself get. Thanksgiving was ours. Since Carrie was small, since before Travis, before any of it, the two of us cooked the whole day. Raymond carved. We made his mother's oyster dressing and my sweet potato casserole with the pecans, and we watched the parade in our pajamas with flour on our hands. After Raymond died, we kept it going, just the two of us, because letting it go would have meant letting go of more than a holiday. Mom, Carrie said, I wanted to talk to you about Thanksgiving this year. I was thinking we'd do it at my place like always, I said, already reaching for a pen to write a grocery list. I can do the dressing, you bring Owen early, we'll let him stir. It's going to be a little different this year. There was that word again. Different. Diane wants to host it at the restaurant, Carrie said. We'll close to the public for the day. She thinks it'll be elegant, the whole family at the big table in the dining room. She's getting a chef friend to do the cooking so nobody's stuck in the kitchen. The restaurant. My restaurant. The dining room I had paid to build, with a chef who was not even Travis, while the woman who had emptied her savings into the walls was asked to come as a guest. And me? I said. Of course you, Mom. Your family. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. You don't need to bring anything. Diane's handling the whole menu. She's very particular about how it all comes together. Just come and enjoy yourself. You don't need to bring anything. I understood, even then, that this was not generosity. It was the gentlest possible way of telling a woman there was no longer any room for what she made. My dressing was not wanted. My casserole was not wanted. My hands, which had made every Thanksgiving of my daughter's life, were not wanted in that kitchen. But I said all right, honey, and I told myself that showing up small was better than not showing up at all. I still believe, looking back, that if I had been allowed to shrink just a little more, I would have. That is the part that frightens me now. There was almost no floor under how small I was willing to make myself to keep a seat in my own daughter's life. What would you have done, sitting where I was sitting? I am asking honestly. Tell me in the comments, because I have wondered for 2 years whether I was patient or whether I was simply a coward with good manners. A few days before the holiday, the thing happened that ends the patience of every woman in a story like mine. It was small. They always are. Pat Halloran called me on a Tuesday afternoon. I could tell from her first word that she was steeling herself. Nell, I have to tell you something, and I went back and forth on whether I should, but if it were me, I'd want to know. My stomach dropped the way it does on the first hill of a roller coaster. What is it, Pat? I was at the farmer's market this morning, by the cheese stall. Carrie was there. And Diane. She paused. I was about to come say hello. Then I heard what they were talking about, and I just stood there behind the flowers like a fool. What did you hear? Diane was talking about Thanksgiving. She said, and I'm telling you word for word because I wrote it in my phone so I wouldn't soften it, she said, Carrie, darling, I know she's your mother, but I just don't feel comfortable with her at the table. She's so plain, and she has nothing to talk about, and she watches everyone eat like she's tallying the bill. She doesn't fit the picture we're building. Plain. There it was, the word she had been circling for 4 years, finally said out loud in a public square over a wedge of Gruyere. And Carrie, I said. My voice did not sound like mine. What did Carrie say? Pat was quiet for a moment, and that quiet told me before she did. She didn't defend you, Nell. She just sort of laughed, the uncomfortable kind, and said, I know, but I can't exactly tell my own mother she's uninvited. She's still my mom. I can't exactly tell my own mother she's uninvited. As if I were a problem to be managed. As if my presence at a table were a fee the family had to pay for the privilege of having Carrie. I thanked Pat. I told her I was glad she'd told me. I hung up the phone, and I sat in my kitchen with the afternoon light going long across the floor, and for the first time in a very long time, what rose in me was not grief. It was anger. Clean and cold, like the first morning of real winter. I did not sleep that night. I lay awake and ran the whole 4 years back through my mind like a ledger I was finally bothering to balance. The calls that came late or never. The cornbread taken off the menu. Raymond's photograph in a back room and then in my front hall. The food rejected, the anniversary stolen, the brass plate in the drawer. The slow, polite, Relentless work of making me disappear so the picture Diane was building would not have a plain old loan officer standing in the frame. At 2 in the morning I got up, and I did not turn on the lamp, because I did not need to see the documents to know what they said. I sat down at my computer and I opened the folder Vivian and I had made 4 years before. The operating agreement. The capital contribution records. The wire confirmation for $310,000. My name, Eleanor Brandt, controlling member, 60%. Travis Mercer, managing member, 40%, vested at 28 after 3 years. And the clauses I had only half listened to. Final say over any sale. Final say over any rebrand or change of name. A permanent advisory seat at the table. I had been so ashamed of those clauses when Vivian wrote them. I had felt like a mother who could not trust her own child. Now they read like a letter I had written to myself across 4 years, a letter that said, "Nell, the day will come when you need to remember who actually owns the ground you are standing on, and on that day you will be glad you wrote this down." I printed the documents. I do not entirely know why. I put them in a clean folder and I set the folder on the kitchen table, and I made coffee at 3 in the morning and I drank it standing at the window while the streetlights buzzed and the rest of the world slept off its Turkey Day shopping. And somewhere in that cold clarity, a plan put itself together, fully formed, the way a number sometimes just appears at the bottom of a long column you have been adding for hours. I called Vivian Ashford the next morning at 8 o'clock. She picked up on the second ring. "Nell. Everything all right?" "I need to come see you today," I said. "About Larkspur." "About my interest in it." "How soon can you fit me in?" "I have someone at 10. "Come at 11. She hesitated. "You sound like a woman who has made up her mind about something." "I have," I said. "I just need you to tell me whether the law agrees with me." Vivian's office was on the 4th floor of an old bank building downtown, the kind with brass mail chutes and radiators that knocked. She had been practicing 40 years and she had the unhurried calm of a woman who has seen every way a family can break and is no longer surprised by any of them. She poured me coffee I did not want and let me put the folder on her desk, and she put on her glasses and read every page while a streetcar bell rang somewhere below the window. When she finished she took the glasses off and folded her hands. "Nell, you are the controlling owner of this company. 60%, no dilution, no side agreements that I can see. Travis owns 40. That means the business is, in every way that matters, yours to direct. Tell me exactly what I can do." "You can sell your interest. You can find a buyer for your 60% and walk away with whatever they'll pay, and the new owner steps into your shoes, controlling member, full say. Travis has a right of first refusal, which means before you sell to an outsider you have to offer it to him at the same price. If he can match the offer, he buys you out. If he can't, you're free to sell to whoever you like." She tapped the page. "And there's this. As controlling member you can also remove the managing member from operational control, with cause or without it, on 30 days' notice. Travis runs that kitchen because you let him. The day you sell, that becomes the new owner's decision, not his." Could Travis afford to buy me out? Vivian gave me a look that was almost tender. "Nell, you know the answer better than I do. You read their books. They cleared a small profit this year for the first time. They do not have $350,000 sitting anywhere, and no bank is going to hand it to them on those numbers. The right of first refusal protects the principal. It does not protect them." I sat with that. Out the window the streetcar bell rang again. "Vivian, if I wanted to sell quickly. How fast could it move? With a cash buyer who already knows the market and doesn't need financing? Faster than you'd think. A week, maybe 2, if the buyer is motivated and you're willing to take a fair price instead of a maximum one." She studied me. "Do you have a buyer in mind, or is this still anger talking?" "It's not anger," I said, and then I corrected myself, because Vivian had earned my honesty. "It started as anger. It's something quieter than that now. I have a name. Marcus Dunn." Her eyebrows went up half an inch. Dunn owns 3 places across the river. Good operator. Buys distressed and undervalued. How do you know him? Before we find out what happened next in the story, I want to take a brief moment to speak directly to anyone watching who might be going through their own sudden, overwhelming transition. If you are navigating a bitter divorce, the loss of a spouse, or a financial shock, you know the hardest part isn't just the money, it's not knowing what to do first. That is exactly why we created the Phoenix Blueprint. It is a practical, step-by-step guide for starting over. It doesn't have fluffy affirmations or vision boards. It is a tactical survival manual. It gives you the exact checklist for the first 48 hours, including the one rule you must follow: do not make any decision you cannot reverse. It includes the Found Money worksheet, showing you exactly how to check state databases, because 1 in 7 Americans actually has unclaimed money waiting for them right now. It even gives you word-for-word boundary scripts to use when family members pressure you for money or try to make decisions for you. You can get the entire guide right now for just $17. If you're watching on your TV, just pull out your phone, open your camera, and scan the QR code on the screen right now. If you're on a computer or phone, click the top link in the description. You don't have to figure this out alone. Now, let's get back to the story. He came into the credit union years ago when he was just starting, before any bank would touch him. I wrote his first equipment loan. He paid it off 2 years early, and he sent me a card every Christmas for a decade. He told me once that if I ever had a piece of a good restaurant to sell, to call him before anyone else. Then call him, Vivian said. I called Marcus Dunn from my car in the parking garage. He remembered me before I finished saying my name. I told him what I had and what I wanted, which was a fast, clean, cash purchase of a controlling interest in a profitable little farm-table restaurant on Lyle Street that he had probably eaten in. There was a silence while he pulled the place up in his memory. Larkspur, he said. Blue letters on the brass sign. Good bones, decent crowd, kitchen's tighter than it should be. I've watched it. Another pause. Nell, can I ask why you're selling the controlling stake in a place your own family runs? I told him the truth, because Marcus Dunn had paid back his loan early. I told him my family had built a beautiful room and decided there was no chair in it for the woman who paid for the walls. He was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry, he said. Truly. But I won't pretend I'm not interested. I've wanted a foothold on that side of town for 2 years. He named a number. It was $355,000. More than I had put in. The business had grown, and that was the cruel arithmetic of it, that my exile had made me money. I'll take it, I said. On one condition about timing. Name it. I need it closed before Thanksgiving. The day before, if your lawyer can move. There was a long pause, and then Marcus Dunn, who I think understood more than I said, let out a low breath. The day before Thanksgiving, he repeated. Nell, you are not just selling a restaurant. No, I said. I am not. Then I'll have my attorney call Vivian Ashford this afternoon. Let's get it done. I should tell you what I felt driving home, because you might expect triumph and there was none. There was no joy in it. There was a strange, level calm, the way the world goes very still in the eye of a storm. I had spent 4 years folding myself smaller and smaller to fit a space that kept shrinking, and I had finally understood the thing that should have been obvious from the start. It did not matter how small I made myself. There was no size at which I became enough for them. So I had decided to stop shrinking. I had decided to take up exactly as much room as I had paid for. The next days were strange and busy in a hidden way. Travis's right of first refusal had to be honored, so Vivian sent the formal notice that the controlling member intended to sell her interest, with the price and the buyer named, and the 30-day clock written down to a number of hours. I knew Travis could not match it. The notice was a formality, a door held open that I knew no one could walk through. But the law required the door, and I have spent my life respecting the law, even when it is only theater. Carrie called me the day after the notice landed. I almost did not recognize her voice, it was so thin. Mom, we got a letter from a lawyer. She was trying to sound calm and failing. Something about you selling your share of the restaurant. To some man named Dunn. That can't be right. Mom, that has to be a mistake. It's not a mistake, honey. But why would you? We're a family. Why would you sell to a stranger? You'll understand soon, I said, and I was gentle, because the anger had burned down to something steadier. Are you still expecting me Thursday? A long pause. Yes. Of course. Diane set the table for everyone. Thanksgiving's still on. And then, smaller, Mom, are you okay? You're scaring me. I'm better than I have been in a long time, I said. And it was true. I want to tell you about the letter I wrote, because I think it is the most important thing I did in those days. I did not write it to Carrie, or to Travis, or to Diane. I wrote it to Raymond. I sat at the kitchen table on the night before the closing, with his reading glasses out of the drawer and resting beside the paper because it felt like he could see better with them on, and I wrote to my husband for the first time since the year he died. Ray, I wrote. Tomorrow I am selling our part of the restaurant we helped them build. I know what you would say. You would say a thing isn't worth more than the people in it, and a daughter is worth more than a deed. You taught me that. But you also taught me something you maybe didn't mean to. You left the porch light on every night for 34 years, not because I might get lost, but so I would always know there was a place that was glad I was coming home. They turned my light off, Ray. They did it slowly, so I wouldn't notice, but the house has gone cold. I am going to go turn it back on for myself, because nobody else is going to. I think you would be proud of me. I am choosing to believe you would be proud of me. I love you. Leave the light on. I folded the letter and I put it in the drawer next to the brass plate that never got hung, and I went to bed, and I slept the whole night through for the first time in months. The closing was at 10 o'clock the morning before Thanksgiving, in Vivian's knocking radiator office. Marcus Dunn came in a gray suit with a leather folder and shook my hand with both of his. Mrs. Brandt, he said. It's good to see you. You look exactly the same. You're a liar, Marcus, but a kind one. His attorney and Vivian had the documents stacked and tabbed. I signed where the little plastic arrows pointed, page after page, and my hand did not shake once. When it was done, Marcus's attorney slid a cashier's check across the polished table. $355,000. A rectangle of paper that represented the walls of a restaurant and the last 4 years of my life and, I understood as I picked it up, my freedom. When do you take over operations? I asked. Legally, the moment those signatures dried, Marcus said. Practically, I'll let the current team keep running it through the holiday weekend so nobody's stranded. I'll come introduce myself to my managing partner properly next week and we'll talk about the future. He paused, choosing his words. Now, I have to ask one thing. The transfer notice that gets delivered to the operating address. My attorney's process is to send it certified, with a courier, day of closing, so the record's clean. Standard for me. Do you want me to hold it until after the holiday? I looked at Vivian. Vivian looked at me, and I think she already knew. No, I said. Send it as you normally would. Today. To the restaurant. Marcus held my eyes for a moment, and then he nodded once, the way men nod when they have decided not to ask the question they're thinking. All right, he said. Today. I deposited the check on the way home. Then I went to the cemetery where Raymond is buried, on the hill on the north side, and I sat on the cold grass by his stone and I told him it was done. The larkspur I plant there every spring was long gone for the year, just dry brown stalks, but I touched them anyway. I sat there until I was too cold to feel my hands, and then I went home and I laid out my clothes for the next day, the way you lay out clothes for church, or for court. Thanksgiving morning I woke at 5 and could not get back to sleep, so I made coffee and sat at the window and watched the dark go blue. On any other Thanksgiving in my life I would already have had the oven on, the kitchen warm and smelling of sage. This year my kitchen was quiet and clean. I will not pretend that did not hurt. It hurt the way phantom pain hurts in a limb that is no longer there. At 9, Carrie called, falsely bright. "Morning, Mom. We're all at the restaurant getting set up. Diane's friend has the turkey going, it smells incredible. You're still coming, right? Dinner's at 1. You can come at noon if you want to help with the place settings." Help with the place settings. Not cook, not host, not sit. Help fold the napkins in a dining room I had built and no longer owned. "I'll be there at 12:30, I said. "Perfect. Love you, Mom." "I love you too, sweetheart." And I did. That was the terrible part. I loved her the whole time. I drove to Lyle Street at 12:30 in the navy dress I wore to Raymond's brother's funeral, with the little pearl earrings Raymond gave me on our 30th anniversary, the last gift he ever bought me. I parked across the street and sat for a minute looking at the brass letters spelling Larkspur in the gray noon light, the name I had given the place out of a wedding bouquet and a back fence full of stubborn blue flowers. Then I picked up my handbag, with nothing in it but my wallet and my phone, and I went in. The room was beautiful. I have to give them that. The big table down the center was laid in white and gold, candles already lit though it was midday, a centerpiece of white roses, never Larkspur. Diane hated Larkspur. The good smell of roasting turkey came from the kitchen where a chef I had never met was working a stove I had paid for. Travis was at the bar in a sweater the color of cranberries, pouring wine. He looked up and his face did something complicated when he saw me. "Nell. Happy Thanksgiving. Come in, come in." He came around the bar and gave me an awkward half-hug. Up close he looked tired and unsure, like a man waiting for weather. Carrie came out of the kitchen in a deep green dress, beautiful, her hair done, and for a second she was just my girl and I almost forgot everything. "Mom, you're here." She hugged me, quick and tight and over too soon. "Come sit. Let me get you a drink. There are people I want you to meet." She led me to the seating area by the window, where Diane sat in a wine-colored dress and her unmoving silver hair, holding court. Beside her were two people I did not know, a younger man and woman, friendly-faced, a little overdressed. "Mom, this is Cole, Travis's brother, and his wife Sabrina. They came in from Charlotte." We shook hands. They were pleasant. They had no idea what they had been invited into. "And you remember Gerald," Carrie said, and Travis's father nodded at me from his chair with a kindness that had never once been enough to change anything. Diane did not rise. She looked at me from her seat the way you look at a delivery you did not order. "Eleanor," she said. "How punctual. Sit, sit. We're nearly ready." "Happy Thanksgiving, Diane," I said, and I sat in a single chair set slightly apart from the group, the way you set a chair for someone you expect to leave early. I want you to picture this clearly, because it is the picture I had been living inside for 4 years and finally saw from the outside. I was sitting in the dining room of the restaurant I had paid to build, in a chair pulled away from the family, while my daughter served appetizers that another woman's caterer had made, and the woman who had erased me sat in the center like a queen at the head of a country she did not own. I was there, and I was not there. The most expensive ghost in the building. For half an hour they talked. Sabrina described the drive up from Charlotte. Gerald commented on the unseasonable cold. Diane held the room with a long story about a cruise through the Greek islands and the inadequacy of the staff aboard. Travis laughed in the right places. Carrie nodded at everything her mother-in-law said and refilled glasses and did not look at me. I sat with a glass of wine I did not drink and waited. At 1 o'clock Carrie clapped her hands lightly. "Everyone, dinner's ready. Come to the table." We rose and moved to the long table. Diane took the head, naturally, the seat nearest the kitchen where she could direct the chef. Travis sat at her right hand. Carrie at her left. Cole and Sabrina filled in beside Travis, Gerald beside Carrie. And I was left to the far end of that long white table, alone at the foot, as far from my daughter as the room allowed, with an empty chair on either side of me like a moat. I sat down slowly. And something that had been cracking in me for 4 years finished cracking, clean through, the way a frozen branch finally lets go. The chef brought out the turkey on a board and Travis carved it, which was the one thing in the whole day that felt right, a cook doing a cook's job. Plates went around. Wine was poured. And then Diane lifted her glass, and the table went quiet, and she smiled the smile that had won every fight she had ever picked. "Before we begin," she said, "I'd like to say a few words. I am so grateful for this family. For my son Travis, who took nothing but a dream and built this beautiful place with his own 2 hands. For Carrie, the daughter I always wished for. For this room, full of the people I love. And for the life we have made here together. We are so blessed. Happy Thanksgiving." Built it with his own 2 hands. From nothing. There it was, said out loud at the head of my table, the whole lie in one sentence, the erasure complete and toasted in good wine. I set my glass down without drinking. I had heard the only thing I came to hear. I looked down the long table at Carrie. She was laughing at something Cole had said, her face open and easy and far away, oblivious to me, oblivious to the moat of empty chairs, oblivious to the woman at the foot of the table who had paid for the candle she was lit by. The doorbell at the front of the restaurant chimed. We had not unlocked for the public. Travis frowned and got up. "We're closed," he said to the room. "I'll handle it." He went to the front. I heard the door, a low murmur of voices, a question, an answer. Then Travis came back into the dining room, and the color had gone out of his face. "There's a courier," he said. "He needs a signature. It's certified, it's addressed to the managing member of Larkspur LLC. He says it's the operating address." He looked confused and a little afraid, the way you look at a thing that does not fit the day. "Then sign for it, dear, and sit down," Diane said. "Honestly. On a holiday." Travis signed. He came back to the table holding a stiff envelope, turning it over in his hands. He sat, and he opened it, and he read. I watched it land on him line by line, the way I have watched 100 people across a counter read a number that changes their life. His jaw went slack. He read it again. He looked up the table, not at Diane, at me. "Nell," he said. His voice was very quiet. "What is this?" "Read it out loud, Travis," I said. "Everyone should hear it." He did not want to. But the table had gone silent and the envelope had its own gravity now, and so he read, his voice unsteady. Notice of transfer of controlling membership interest. The 60% controlling interest in Larkspur LLC, formerly held by Eleanor Brandt, has been sold and transferred in full to Dunn Hospitality LLC, effective as of the date below. Mr. Marcus Dunn, as controlling member, will assume direction of the company. A transition meeting is scheduled for the following Monday. The current managing member's operational authority is subject to review by the new controlling member. The silence after that was not like other silences. It had weight. It pressed on the candles. Diane was the first to move. "What on earth is that nonsense?" she said, but her voice had a thread of fear in it now. "Travis, what is he talking about, controlling interest? You own this restaurant." "I own 40% of it, Mom," Travis said, and he was still looking at me, and his face was changing, the way a face changes when a thing you half knew but never let yourself see comes all the way into the light. "Nell owns the rest. Nell always owned the rest. $310,000. It was in the papers we signed. He stopped. "I just never thought about it." "You never thought about it," I said, "because you were taught not to think about me at all." Carrie pushed her chair back and stood. Her napkin fell to the floor. "Mom." Her voice cracked on the one word. "Mom, did you do this? Did you sell it? To a stranger?" "Yes, Carrie. I did." "How could you?" Tears were standing in her eyes, and they were not soft tears, they were furious. "We built our whole life on this place. Owen's college, our future, everything. How could you sell it out from under us? It was never out from under you, I said, and I kept my voice level, because I had run out of the kind of feeling that raises a voice. It was under me the whole time. I bought the ground. I bought the walls. I held the deed to the dream you toasted, and you all stood on it for 4 years and told me there was no room for my feet. Diane stood now too, 2 spots of red high on her cheeks. This is theft, she said. This is vindictive, hateful theft. You are putting my son out of his own business out of spite, you bitter old woman. I turned and looked at her, fully, for the first time in 4 years. Your son is not out of anything yet, Diane. He owns 40% of a thriving restaurant, and he has a new partner who is one of the best operators in this city, and if he is willing to work and listen he may keep his kitchen and build something real. What he has lost is you sitting at the head of a table telling everyone he built it from nothing. I let that sit. And you? You have spent 4 years deciding I was too plain to sit at the table I paid for. You took my husband's photograph off the wall. You took his recipe off the menu. You stole my anniversary dinner and you called me plain over a wedge of cheese at the farmer's market, where my friend was standing close enough to write it down. You wanted me invisible. Congratulations. I have made myself the most visible person in this room. Diane's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. Carrie was crying openly now, both hands pressed to her face. Mom, why? Why would you do this to us, at Thanksgiving, in front of everyone? And here is the thing I had waited 4 years to be able to say, and I said it as gently as I have ever said anything. Because I asked you for a seat, Carrie. Quietly, for 4 years, I asked. Where was my dressing this Thanksgiving? Where was my casserole? Where was my chair at this table, instead of at the very end with empty seats on both sides like I had a contagious disease? There was room for Diane's caterer and Diane's club friends and a brother from Charlotte I have met one time, but there was no room for the woman who emptied her savings so this room could exist. You did not have to scream at me to make me feel invisible. You just had to keep doing exactly what you did. And I let you, because I thought my love was the kind that does not ask for anything back. I was wrong. Love that never gets to come home isn't love. It's just a bill nobody intends to pay. Cole and Sabrina were staring at their plates. Gerald had his eyes closed. The candles burned. The turkey sat cooling on its board, untouched, in the middle of the most expensive Thanksgiving I had ever not eaten. I stood up. I picked up my handbag. You have until Monday to talk to Mr. Dunn, I said. He is a fair man. He will give you a real chance, which is more than this table ever gave me. I am going to go home now. Mom, wait. Carrie came around the table, reaching for me. Wait. We can fix this. We can talk to him, we can talk to you, please, don't just leave like this. I stopped at the edge of the room. I turned and looked at my daughter, at her wet face, at the green dress, at the woman she had become inside that other woman's house. You know what is the saddest part, Carrie? 2 months ago, 2 weeks ago, if you had stood up at that farmer's market and said, she is my mother and she sits wherever I sit, none of this would be happening. I would have given that restaurant away with both hands for one sentence like that. But you didn't say it. And now it's too late for the easy version. It's never too late, Mom. For some things it is, I said. Happy Thanksgiving, sweetheart. I walked out through the brass door under the brass letters, and behind me the room came apart, voices rising over each other, Diane's sharp and Carrie's broken and Travis's low. I did not look back. I got in my car and I drove away, and my hands were perfectly steady on the wheel, which surprised me, because I had expected to shake. I did not go home right away. I drove to the cemetery. It was nearly empty on Thanksgiving, just me and a cold and a groundskeeper's truck far off. I walked up the hill to Raymond's Stone and I sat down on the frozen grass in my funeral dress and I told him everything, out loud, the way I used to tell him about my day across the dinner table. I told him about the courier and the toast and the moat of empty chairs. I told him I had turned the porch light back on. And then, finally, sitting on the ground next to my husband of 34 years, I cried. Not the careful, swallowed almost crying I had perfected over 4 years. The real kind. The kind that empties you out. When I was done I felt scraped clean and very light, the way the sky looks after a hard rain. I took out my phone. I had 11 missed calls from Carrie, 6 texts from Travis, 2 from numbers I did not know, and 1 from Pat. I read Pat's first. Nell, Carrie called me sobbing. I don't know what you did but I know you, and I know you didn't do it for nothing. I'm proud of you. Call me when you can. I love you. I texted her back. I'm okay. Better than okay. I'll tell you everything tomorrow. I love you too. Then I read Travis's messages. Nell, please call me. Nell, I didn't know, I swear I half didn't know, I'm sorry. Nell, my mother is saying terrible things and I'm starting to understand she's been saying them for years. Nell, you were right and I hate that you were right. Nell, please don't think I never knew what you gave us. Nell, I'm sorry. I did not answer Travis yet. But I did not delete them either. Carrie's messages were a staircase down into something, and then a step back up. Mom, answer me. Mom, how could you? Mom, Diane is screaming at Travis, it's a nightmare. Mom, you ruined Thanksgiving. Mom, Diane just left and slammed the door so hard a glass broke. Mom, Travis is sitting on the floor of the kitchen. Mom, are you really going to let it end like this? And then, an hour later, just, Mom, I'm sorry. I think I've been sorry for a long time and didn't let myself feel it. I read that last one 3 times. Then I wrote her one message, and I meant for it to be the only one I sent that night. Carrie. I'm going to say this once and then I'm turning my phone off. I did not ruin Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving was ruined the morning you stood in a market and let someone call your mother plain and said nothing. I love you. I have loved you every single day, including the days you forgot I existed. When you are ready to talk, really talk, just you, no Diane, no audience, no defending anyone but the truth, I will be here. Not before. Your father left the light on for me for 34 years. I have finally learned to leave it on for myself. Happy Thanksgiving. I sent it. I turned the phone off and put it in the glove box. I sat on the hill until the light started to go, and then I kissed my hand and put it on the cold top of Raymond Stone, and I drove home to a quiet house that, for the first time in years, did not feel cold. I will not pretend the next part was fast or simple. Healing never is, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. For 9 days I left the phone in the glove box more than I carried it. I cooked the Thanksgiving dinner I had wanted, just for myself, 2 days late, the dressing and the casserole and a small bird, and I ate it at my own table with Raymond's photo watching from the front hall and the radio playing the old songs. I called Pat and told her the whole story over 2 pots of coffee, and she laughed and cried in the right places and told me I was the bravest woman she knew. I told her I was not brave, I was just finally too tired to be afraid, and she said those are the same thing, Nell, that is what brave has always been. Vivian called to tell me the sale was clean and final and that Travis had not retained a lawyer to challenge anything, because there was nothing to challenge. He had gone to the Monday meeting with Marcus Dunn and, by Vivian's account through the lawyer grapevine, had handled himself well, had not made excuses, had asked smart questions about the future. Marcus had decided to keep him on as the working chef and managing partner, with a new operating agreement that actually protected him, and was talking about the second location Travis had always wanted, the one Diane used to push him toward as proof of the family's rising fortune. Travis would build it now for himself, with a real partner, on honest terms. I felt no triumph hearing it. I felt something better. I felt the satisfaction of a loan officer who has watched a young man finally get put on a payment plan he can actually keep. Diane I heard about from Pat, who hears about everything eventually. After the holiday, Diane had stopped speaking to Travis, waiting for an apology that did not come. She told her club friends I was a thief and a monster, and a few of them nodded, and a few of them, the ones who had mothers of their own, went quiet and changed the subject. She had built her whole standing in that little world on being the matriarch of a self-made success, and the success had turned out to belong to a plain old loan officer she'd been insulting at the cheese stall. The story got around. It always does. I did not spread it. I did not have to. Pride is a loud house guest, and Diane's had been talking for years. On the 9th day, I turned the phone back on for good. 40-some messages. Most from Carrie, and I read them in order, and I watched my daughter come back to herself one text at a time. The fury, then the panic, then the bargaining, then a long silence, and then, near the end, something honest. Mom, I keep replaying the market. I keep hearing myself laugh. I don't know how I became someone who laughs when her mother is called plain. I want to find out so I never do it again. Will you let me try? I answered, you can bring my brass plate back to me, the one I gave you and Travis that I took back. It's at my house, actually. I mean you can come get yourself. Come Saturday at 10. Come alone. She wrote back in 4 minutes. Okay. Alone. Thank you, Mom. Saturday came in gray and still. I cleaned the house, which I did not need to do, and I put fresh coffee on, and at 10 o'clock exactly the doorbell rang, and there was my daughter on the step. No makeup. Dark circles. Jeans and an old college sweatshirt I thought she'd thrown out years ago. Owen was not with her. She had come the way I asked, alone, and small in a way that had nothing to do with Diane. Hi, Mom, she said. Hi, baby. Come in. We sat at the kitchen table where this had all started 4 years ago, where she had asked me for $310,000 with her father's grin and her own eyes. I poured the coffee. For a while neither of us said anything, and the old furnace ticked, and the clock over the stove ticked, and it was the loudest quiet I have ever sat in. She broke first. I need to understand it, Mom. Not to argue. I just need to understand. Why like that? Why at the table, in front of everyone? I had thought about how to answer this. Because the table in front of everyone was where you put me, Carrie. At the very end, with empty chairs on both sides. I didn't choose that stage. I just refused to keep performing on it the way you wanted. She looked down into her coffee. I didn't realize I was hurting you. That sounds like a lie, but it isn't. I stopped looking at you. Diane filled up so much room, and it was so much easier to keep her happy than to keep checking on you, because you never made noise. You never asked for anything. I told myself that meant you were fine. I made noise, I said. I made the quietest kind. I brought cobbler. I sent invitations. I drove across town with warm food so your cooks wouldn't faint at the stove. That was me, asking. You just stopped hearing it, because it was easier to please someone who threatened to leave than someone you knew never would. Her chin crumpled. Why was it easier? Because you knew I'd stay no matter what. That's the cruelest thing about a mother. We're the one person you're allowed to take for granted, because we let you. I let you, Carrie. For 4 years I taught you that you could treat me like furniture and I'd still be there at Thanksgiving. So this year I stopped teaching that. She started to cry, the real way, the way she cried as a little girl when she'd done something she knew was wrong before she even understood why. And I did the thing I had wanted to do for 4 years and would not let myself do. I got up and went around the table and put my arms around my daughter and held her while she shook. I'm sorry, Mom, she kept saying into my shoulder. I'm so sorry. I lost you and I didn't even notice. I know, I said. I know, baby. When she had cried herself out we sat back down and we talked like 2 grown women for the first time in years. She asked if there was any way to fix it. I told her the restaurant was gone and I could not undo that and would not if I could, but that the restaurant had never been the thing that broke. She asked what she had to do. I told her the truth. I need you to respect me. Not perform respect when it's convenient. I need you to remember I'm a whole person with a whole life that existed before you and will exist after you. And I need you to put a wall up between me and that woman. I am not asking you to choose me over Diane. I am telling you that you don't get to let her wipe her feet on me and call it keeping the peace. The next time she calls me plain, you say a sentence. Just one. That's all I ever needed. One sentence in my defense, out loud, in front of people. Carrie nodded, wiping her face. Travis said something the other night, she said. He said, your mom did the only thing that could have woken us up, and we're the ones who made her do it. He's been different since Thanksgiving. With his mom, I mean. He finally said no to her. The whole thing blew up, but he said no, and he meant it. She gave a wet, surprised little laugh. I think you didn't just save yourself, Mom. I think you saved him from turning into a man who builds his whole life trying to make Diane proud and never once asks himself if he's proud. I reached across the table and took my daughter's hand. It was the first time she had let me hold it in longer than I could remember. We can try, I said. But it's going to take time, and it's going to take real change, not just a hard cry on a Saturday. And Carrie, hear me. If you ever make me invisible again, I will love you from a distance for the rest of my life, but I will not come back to that table. I have learned how to leave my own light on. I won't unlearn it for anyone, even you. I understand, she said. And for the first time in 4 years, I believed she did. The months after that were slow and careful, like walking on a floor you know has a soft board somewhere in it. Carrie and I started meeting on Wednesday mornings for breakfast, just the two of us, at a diner that had nothing to do with Diane or Larkspur or any of it. At first the conversations were stiff, both of us minding our feet. Then, week by week, my daughter came back to me. The real one, the funny one, the one who used to tell me everything twice the way Owen does now. She told me about Travis and Diane. After Thanksgiving, Diane had waited for the apology that was her birthright, and Travis had not given it, and the silence had stretched into the new year. When Diane finally broke it, she did not soften. She told Travis he was an ungrateful son defending the woman who had robbed his family. And Travis, who had spent 36 years swallowing exactly that kind of sentence, told her the robbery was the 4 years they spent treating his wife's mother like hired help, and that he was done, that if she wanted to be in his life she would learn to sit at a table as an equal and not a ruler, and until then she could call him when she was ready to apologize to me. Diane hung up on him. She did not call back for a long time. I felt no joy in it, and I want to be honest about that, because the easy version of this story would have me dancing. I did not dance. What Diane was losing she was losing to her own hands, not to mine. I had not cursed her. I had just stopped absorbing her. And a woman who has spent her life controlling everyone through a mix of charm and disapproval finds, when the people around her stop flinching, that she is suddenly very alone in a very quiet house. Pat told me, the next summer, that Diane had ended up in the hospital with her blood pressure dangerously high after an argument, and that the doctor had told her plainly that the way she was living was going to kill her. And that, somewhere in the long boring weeks of recovery, Diane had started seeing a therapist, the first one of her life, and had begun, slowly and against her will, to look at the pattern she had run for 60 years. The need to be at the head of every table. The way she made love conditional on agreement. The terror, underneath all of it, of being ordinary, which is why ordinary in anyone else, in me, made her so cruel. I did not need her to suffer to be at peace. I had found my peace already, by then, in a life that had quietly become my own. I did not take up painting, the way you might expect. I went back to the only thing I have ever been good at besides loving people badly served by my love. I went back to numbers, but on my own terms. I started a free workshop at the public library on the first Saturday of every month, for women my age and older, women newly widowed or freshly divorced or simply never taught, sitting them down with their bank statements and their fear and showing them how a household works, how to read a loan, how to never sign a thing they have not understood, how to keep their name on what is theirs. 12 women came the first month. The room is full now. I call it leaving the light on. They do not know why. Some of them have figured it out. One Saturday, after a session, a woman about my age stayed behind to stack chairs with me. She had left a marriage at 70 with nothing in her own name because she had spent 50 years being told that handling money was her husband's job. She said to me, "You're so brave, doing this, telling us all the things nobody told us." I gave her the answer Pat had given me. I told her I was not brave. I told her I had just gotten too tired to keep being afraid, and that the bravest thing I ever did, I did exhausted, in a navy funeral dress, with shaking hands I forced to be still. She nodded like she understood, and I think she did, because she came back the next month and brought her sister. The first real test came at Owen's 5th birthday, the spring after everything fell apart. We were all in Carrie's backyard, an uneasy little crowd, Diane on one side of the patio and me on the other, both of us minding our manners. Owen was showing the whole party how he could pump his own legs on the swing. Diane, watching me watch him, said to the woman beside her, just loud enough to travel, "Well, of course he's closer to me, I've simply always been the available one, some grandmothers are more the background type." 2 years before, I would have studied my shoes and let it go by. 2 years before, Carrie would have laughed the uncomfortable laugh and steered the talk somewhere else. This time my daughter set down her cup. "Diane," she said, clear and even, across the whole patio so there was no missing it. "My mother is not background. She is the reason that swing set and this house and half of what you are standing in exist, and she is the best thing in my son's life after his father and me. I am not going to hear her called less than that again. Not from you, not from anyone." The patio went quiet. Diane's mouth worked and made no sound. And Carrie walked across the grass and stood next to me and stayed there, which is the whole of what a sentence really is, when you strip it down. A way of standing beside someone, in front of people who expected you to stand somewhere else. I had waited 4 years for one sentence in my defense, said out loud, where it counted. It was worth the wait. It was very nearly worth the 4 years. Larkspur is still there. Marcus Dunn kept the name, which surprised me. He told me once, when I ran into him at the market, that he had looked into changing it and decided against it because the name had a story and you cannot manufacture a story, you can only inherit one or steal one. Travis runs the kitchen still, a better and humbler cook than he was, with a real partner who respects him. And the second location opened last spring, a smaller place, breakfast and lunch only, the kind of room where you can hear people talk. Travis named it Raymond's. He put my husband's photograph by the door, the one from the hardware shop, and he put the cornbread back on the menu and called it Ray's. He did not ask my permission. He just did it, and then he called me and asked me to come to the soft opening, and I went, and I stood by the door and looked at Raymond grinning in the doorway of one shop inside the doorway of another, and I had to go stand in the alley for a minute. Carrie was beside me when I came back in. She had been watching for me. She slipped her arm through mine. "Mom," she said, "do you want to know the worst thing and the best thing, both at once? Tell me. I had to lose you to learn how to keep you. I will never stop being sorry that's how I learned it. And I will never stop being grateful that I learned it at all." I did not have a clever answer. I just leaned my head on my daughter's shoulder, in a restaurant named for her father, and let it be true. There is one more thing, and it is the thing that makes me believe the whole hard road was the right one. In the spring, Carrie told me she was pregnant again. A girl, this time. She and Travis came to my house to tell me, with Owen, who announced it 3 times the way he announces everything, and then asked if the baby could sleep in his room, then said never mind. Carrie took my hands at the kitchen table where she had once asked me for everything and where she had once cried herself empty, and she said, "Mom, we want to name her Eleanor. After you. And we want you in every part of her life. Not the way it was. The way it should have been. The whole time. I am not a woman who cries easily. I have done more crying in the telling of this story than I did in the living of most of it. But I cried then, at that table, with my grandson tugging my sleeve and my daughter holding my hands and my husband grinning from the front hall, because the porch light I had finally learned to leave on for myself had somehow, without my asking, started drawing my family home. This past Thanksgiving, 2 years after the one that changed everything, we did it at Raymond's, the little breakfast place, closed for the day, just us. The table was small. Carrie cooked the turkey and let it run a little dry, and we all said it was perfect. I made the dressing and the sweet potato casserole with the pecans, the same one that was not wanted 2 years before, and this time there were no leftovers, because everyone ate, even the second helping kind of eating. Owen sat next to me and told me everything twice. Baby Eleanor slept in a basket by the window in the good afternoon light. Diane was there too. I will not lie and say it was warm. We are not friends and we will not be. But she came, which cost her something, and somewhere in the past year she had learned to come to a table without needing to sit at the head of it. When Travis carved the turkey, she did not direct him. When my casserole came around, she took some. She looked at me once, across that small table, and gave me a small stiff nod, the kind that is not an apology but is the closest a proud woman gets to one, and I gave her one back, because I have no more room in my life for the work of hating anyone. And Travis stood up to make the toast, the way he had 2 years ago, and the room went quiet the way it had 2 years ago, and for one breath my stomach tightened out of old habit. But he did not talk about building anything with his own 2 hands. I want to thank the women at this table, he said, and his voice was not smooth, it caught a little. My mother, who is learning, late but she's learning, how to love people without running them. My wife, who fought her way back to herself, which is the hardest fight there is. And Nell. He looked down the table at me, and there was no moat of empty chairs this time, I was sitting right beside my grandson in the middle of everything. Nell, who taught this whole family the lesson we were too comfortable to learn any other way. That love without respect isn't love, it's just somebody being used until they run out. You didn't let us use you up. You blew the whole thing apart so we'd have to put it back together right. Thank you for refusing to disappear. Everyone raised their glasses. Even Diane. I raised mine, and this time I drank. Later, Carrie and I were alone in the little kitchen washing dishes, the way we used to, my hands in the water and hers on the towel. Mom, she said. Can I ask you something? Do you regret it? Selling Larkspur. The money, the way it happened, all of it. I dried my hands and thought about it honestly, because she deserved an honest answer. No, I said. I made more money on that sale than I put in, so I didn't even lose the thing everyone thinks I lost. But that was never the question. The question was whether I'd spend the rest of my life folded up in a corner of someone else's table, calling that love because I was afraid of the alternative. I traded a restaurant for a daughter who can look me in the eye. I'd make that trade 1,000 times. I'm the one who regrets it, Carrie said, quietly. I regret all the years it took. I regret that you had to teach me with a courier on Thanksgiving when one sentence at a farmer's market would have done it. We can't go back and spend those years differently, I said. But we got the rest of them. That's not a small thing. That's everything. She put down the towel and hugged me, in the steam and the dish soap and the smell of a turkey somebody loved enough to slightly overcook, and we stood there a while, mother and daughter and also just 2 women who had found their way back across a hard distance. So let me tell you what I have learned, you who are still listening, you who maybe recognized your own daughter in mine, or your own self in me, sitting at the foot of a table you paid for. You are not selfish for wanting a seat. You are not cruel for refusing to be invisible. You are not a bad mother, or a bad wife, or a bad friend, for finally saying that your love has a name and the name is not doormat. The people who only value you when you are useful and silent will call you bitter the moment you ask to be seen. Let them. Their comfort was never worth your disappearance. If you have spent years making yourself smaller to fit in a place that keeps shrinking, hear an old loan officer who learned this the expensive way. There is no size at which you become enough for people who have decided you are furniture. Stop shrinking. Take up exactly as much room as your love has paid for, which is a great deal more than they have ever let you have. Your value was never in what you sacrificed. A woman who gives until she vanishes has not proven her love. She has only proven that she can be taken from. Your value is in the fact that you are here, that you are whole, that you are a person and not a service. Leave the light on for yourself first. You will be amazed who finds their way home once you do. If any part of this story found a sore place in you tonight, I am glad it did, because sore places are how we know there is something still alive and they're worth healing. Tell me in the comments where you are listening from and what this stirred up. Share this with the woman in your life who has been quietly disappearing at her own table, the mother, or the friend or the sister who keeps saying everything is fine in a voice that has stopped meaning it. And if you want more stories like this one, stories about women who got tired of being invisible and decided to be seen, subscribe and tap the bell so the next one finds you. My name is Eleanor Brandt. I am 66 years old, a widow, a mother, a grandmother, and a woman who learned the hard way that the most important light in any house is the one you keep on for yourself. The road here was long and some of it was very dark. I would walk it again tomorrow. Because at the end of it, I can look in the mirror and recognize the woman looking back, and after 4 years of disappearing, there is no Thanksgiving feast in the world richer than that. Leave the light on. I promise you, someone is finding their way home. Stories like this remind us that starting over is terrifying, but it is always possible. If you or someone you love is facing a total reset right now, whether from a divorce, a loss, or a financial disaster, you need a plan. Scan the QR code on your screen or click the link below to get the Phoenix Blueprint for just $17. It gives you the exact steps you need to take in the first 48 hours, and a 90-day plan to get your independence back. Thank you for watching.